Hello guys, it's Modest Major here, bringing you some commentary over some Halo gameplay. In the previous video I just made, I ended up making a small offhand comment about Firefight in Halo. Essentially, I stated that the formula for Firefight had gotten a bit stale, and I didn't think it had much chance of bringing new players into the fold, were it to be included in Halo Infinite. And that got me wondering, why is it that I think that way in the first place? I've actually played a fair share of these types of modes over the years. Gears of War Horde mode, a pretty clear standout. Gears of War 2 selection of maps complementing the Horde space excellently, particularly maps like River and Security being noteworthy. This even goes further back with Rainbow Six Vegas 1 and 2's Terrorist Hunt being an excellent version of the survival genre, with intense last-minute rushdowns from enemies, heightening tension, and requiring pinpoint accuracy and tactical adaptations to survive the onslaught. To me, Halo's Firefight has never stood out being a particular innovator in the genre. I think it probably saw its best incarnation through ODST, with the maps being heavily designed around a fun, fast-paced survival experience. But I think for most players, ODST wasn't going to have the longevity of a regular Halo matchmaking experience. A lot of people staked their claim on grabbing up all the achievements, seeing what the game had to offer, but not feeling a heavy desire to return to its Firefight option in the future. I think Firefight as it existed in Halo Reach kind of took the approach of a more light-hearted arcade-based appeal, with attempts to tack side modes on, such as generator defense they started with, which I feel was like more of an approach for chaotic, fast-paced fun, in a dynamic setting with Halo Reach's options, where high scores offered the biggest source of dopamine. Score attack and sniper fight modes enhanced this too, ultimately catering for a more casual, fiesta-style demographic of gamers. I do, however, believe that this was a big misstep for the direction of survival multiplayer. To highlight this, I want to look at two examples. Gears of War 3 Horde mode began to take Horde in a slightly different direction than previous games. Every 10 rounds, you would now see a boss, one of the more outlandish additions being the Brumac. If you're unfamiliar with the Gears of War series, a Brumac is essentially a two-legged dinosaur-like creature, almost attempting to mirror the size of like a T-Rex in its stature. And the fact that they went out of their way to spawn these on small deathmatch multiplayer-based maps was almost comical in its size and grandeur. I say almost comical because most of the time it inspired dread. These big lumbering titans were coming towards you and you had to be ready for it. Particularly on the game's harder difficulties, they could be a menace to an unprepared team and really helped add to the game's atmosphere. You weren't just mowing down groups of enemies mindlessly, there was going to be some sort of special monster every 10 rounds, whether it be a giant spider-like creature in the Corpser, the raging berserkers with their mindless all-out aggression, or the reavers with their enhanced mobility. It's very easy to feel overwhelmed. Another piece of media I want to discuss is in the anime Attack on Titan. Please don't roll your eyes too hard into the back of your skull, as I've already mentioned anime. But I'd be lying if the anime didn't encapsulate what the best survival aspects of a video game could encase. The characters of Attack on Titan, particularly in Season 1, are tasked with the monumental objective of defending the outer walls from the horde of man-eating titans. Buildings are crashed down upon them as Goliath-sized enemies come droving in hordes at them, and the feeling of terror is all too real as the odds are stacked against the cast. One by one, they're picked apart, having to use the environments to their advantage to stand any sort of chance. Where I think Halo has gone wrong with Firefight is it really stopped striving for any sort of atmosphere. If you want players to want to survive, you need to make the feeling of impending doom be all the more imaginable. I think what makes Firefight too easy to put down is the stakes feel very low. I don't feel like my teammates could be ripped apart at any time brutally. I don't feel the enemy will do anything at all costs to see us all destroyed. Difficulty doesn't equal engagement in this instance. They could tone up the damage ratios of brutes and their equipment, and you could give vehicles to the enemy, give me less bullets, but in this case I don't really believe difficulty is what Firefight is actually missing. When I mentioned the Gears of War idea for Horde, what irks me is that Halo could take an approach like this, except go above and beyond. When you consider the possibilities for scale that a Halo game could take in its survival options, to start with, Scarabs. Imagine you're at Wave 10, feeling on top of your game, when all of a sudden, holy shit, a Halo 2 Scarab has come in, starts shooting its death laser beam at all who dare approach it. In a dream video game fanatic world, I see Destructible Scenery, the Scarab able to tear apart structures, gaping holes appearing in the terrain, and each footstep the Scarab takes, it dips in the ground, tearing up any who would stand in its way, or any obstacle for that matter. All you have at your disposal is jetpacks and a hope in hell as you try to mount the massively imposing Scarab, to destroy it from the inside with droves of heretic guards elites protecting it en masse. You want the chance of passing that point to feel hopeless, not only in difficulty, but how are we going to take down such an unstoppable entity? That does a whole lot more for the heart rate and adrenaline than the fear of being taken down by an unseen beam rifle or a stray rocket launching your way. The variety you could bring in different bosses with the scope of the Halo universe would go up drastically too. Callbacks like Tartarus from Halo 2, fighting him with a compendium of brutes, or perhaps spins on the council member fights. Whilst I'm aware that some of these fights were a bit jank in their original incarnation, I think it would be easy to update these to feel a bit more modern in their approach. I think something like Guilty Spark spawning in would be a nice callback, perhaps with masses of Sentinels coming in, and Guilty Spark throwing out insults and quips would be a great way to implement the history of the Halo franchise. To add to a sense of scale, throwing in a vehicle like the Seraph, being able to drop masses of units at once. I imagine something like Elite attacking from the sky in great numbers, but also Flood coming in from underground simultaneously, giving it a feeling of dread as you seem to be surrounded on all fronts. Perhaps even the Elite and Flood could attack one another, giving the impression you're on an actual live battleground. If Firefight had a problem in the past, it's that it could feel somewhat static, or telegraphed, with an almost robotic quality to the enemies as they move to acquire you. I've talked about it in past commentaries, but I do think Destructible Scenery is the key to unlocking the perfect survival-based game type. I don't think it's realistic for Halo Infinite, as they've got too many balls to juggle as it already stands, but just as food for thought, or something I wish a game would work on in the distant future, Destructible Scenery would add another layer of panic and tension. In a survival mode, I think you need those moments where you plunge into chaos, where you think the enemies, tools exist within a finite box, but all of a sudden your environment is torn to shreds all around you. I want that moment where you're running from an enemy down a hallway and suddenly a window crashes open, an enemy with a gravity hammer smashing apart an outer wall, leaving rubble and dust in its wake as it wages all-out attack at you. These are planet-destroying alien races we're talking about. The idea of them using the front door doesn't always fit into my framework of what I believe these attackers would be capable of realistically. Not to mention from a gameplay perspective, having to dynamically react to a Scarab kicking its way through hallways and interior structures would require an agency from the player not commonly seen. I think developers' imaginations have somewhat waned over the years, and I don't think we're even close to what a perfect survival-based game type could look like in the future. I worry that you would need a fully committed development team to achieve these ideas and goals, and it's not feasible as just a side mode. I question whether a publisher would take a risk on a game like this, even if it has been thought about. Instead, creating the next cutting-edge battle royale seems to be at the precipice of the gaming landscape, which I think's a bit of a shame. But let me know if you agree with some or any of my ideas, or if you have your own ideas for what the optimal survival mode could look like in the Halo universe. I'd love to hear what you think, and have a great day. I've been Modest Major. Peace out.